My name's Naomi Kruger, and I am a writer, a novelist, and I also teach creative writing at the University of Central Lancashire in Preston. My first novel was published this year with Seren, an independent publisher, and is partly about dementia and memory, but also connection and and loss really as well, and kind of family. So yeah, I'm kind of here today doing a workshop, and that's me, I guess. Yeah, I wrote the novel as part of a PhD, and I was exploring how to represent dementia in fiction, the ethics of that, and as part of that, the novel became quite fragmented. So not only is it the voice of the character who is in a care home, but woven around her parts of the novel are other voices and stories. And so it's quite complex structurally, even though I hope the voices are very engaging. So I found that when I was approaching agents and thinking about getting it published, it was quite a challenge to pitch it because there was no simple elevator pitch. It was hard to kind of summarize very easily and very clearly. Although I think it has kind of themes and things that are easy to talk about. So after getting a few rejections from agents that were encouraging, I decided to go for small independents instead, because I think there's a really exciting movement at the moment with independent publishers who are taking risks and innovating and really nourishing writers and giving them the opportunity to try new things. So I sent it out to quite a few and got lots of rejections. But what I found with the independents was even the rejections were generous. They would give feedback. And when I went to Seren, it was initially rejected, but the editor liked it so much they gave me a full page of handwritten feedback, which almost felt like an acceptance. And eventually I met her at an event, and she asked me to send the book again. So it took quite a long time because I had to edit it and work with her and then wait for the contract, and took a couple of years until it actually came out. But it was I felt like I'd found a home for it where people really believed in it and were willing to help me work on it to make it the best it could be. So it was a really positive experience. What I like to say to people who want to write is I think find a community. And for me, that I found that at university by studying it. I don't think it has to be university. I think there are other ways to do it. Find a community of supportive people who want to write as well, and that you hopefully can trust them to be critical and also supportive. I think writing itself can be very isolating, and the act of writing is quite solitary, but the act of kind of developing your work, drafting it, and editing it, I think is very, very hard to do on your own. I think you need to be able to have feedback. It's hard to be objective about your own work. So if you can find a community that can help you and you can share, ideas and give each other feedback, that's really useful. I also think perfectionism, like trying to deal with your perfectionism, you can't get rid of it, but making sure that you don't edit every sentence and never finish a first draft of anything, but allowing the writing initially to be messy. This is something I struggle with, so I talk to my students about it all the time, but I'm still, every time I sit down to write, battling with that voice that's telling me it's never going to be good enough and I need to kind of fix it straight away. So I think they would be my two top tips. Yeah, I love teaching new writers, and part of that is responding to their ideas and helping them to craft and to edit. But the thing I probably enjoy the most is showing them things. That sounds a bit silly, but I think one of the biggest parts of teaching writing is saying, look at what you can do. And part of that is bringing in examples of other writers and encouraging people to experiment in forms and styles that they might not have ever found on their own. So every time I'm preparing material, it gives me a real spur to keep reading and experimenting myself. So I'm learning as I'm teaching. But yeah, being able to say, just look at this, look how amazing this is, or look how interesting this is, and what can we learn from it, is probably the thing that I enjoy the most. But I don't really have a day-to-day routine. And for a long time, I felt like I wasn't a real writer or a proper writer because I didn't sit down in my writing shed at 9 a.m. and work till 5. I struggle, and I think I'm balancing all the time because I'm full-time lecturer. So I do have time set aside for research and writing, but it's hard for me to kind of sit down at the same time every single day and work on a piece of fiction. And especially when you're writing a novel, I think you do kind of need to immerse yourself in that world. So yeah, at the moment I'm struggling with that balance, and what I tend to do is try to edit, research, think about my writing all the time, every day, but actually try and eke out sort of concentrated periods of time in sort of the breaks in my schedule as a teacher to really dive into that world. I think with short fiction and poetry and shorter pieces, I think you can possibly work it around a bit more, but with novels, I think it's quite hard, unless you're an early morning person, which I'm not, to find a time every single day to really get into that space. I think again, I think events like this are really important because it's that sense of community, that if you sit in a lecture or a panel where you hear writers who have been published talk about their process, talk about their struggles, the things that blocked them, and the things that encourage them and allow them to succeed, I think it can be a really encouraging thing to feel that you're not alone, but also to know that yes, it is hard, it's a hard path, and it's hard, and you have to love it, and you have to be passionate about it, but there's no one way of being a writer, and I think it's finding your voice and your way of doing it. And I think you can, and I've been scribbling in my notebook, these things that kind of feel true to me, like somebody in one of the panels was talking about the things that block you from writing, and those voices that tell you you're either not good enough, or it's never going to happen, or your ideas are rubbish. And I think hearing that other people have been through that is really useful, but also hearing how they got through it, and just those words of encouragement. My experience today has been really positive. I'm actually an introvert and sometimes find networking hard, but when you're at an event like this where everybody is passionate about writing, and everyone's really friendly and open and wanting to learn, I think it's really easy to strike up conversations and make connections. So it's been really positive, and I always go away from events like this wanting to write more, because feeling enriched by being with other people who are creative and energetic. I definitely recommend aspiring writers to come to events like the grad fair, because I think just even seeing how writers talk about their work, that is part of being a writer as well, and learning more about those processes that if you're not familiar with it, things like how to get published, how to get an agent, how to pitch, they're not things you automatically know. They are things that can be learned and can be practiced. So I think it's really, really valuable.